A chilling assault on Chad's presidential complex left 19 people dead and many more wondering about the fragility of a nation already riddled with unrest. What led to this brazen attack? And what does it say about Chad's current political climate and future? Let's dive into the complex story of Chad, its history, and its uncertain road ahead. The attack on the heart of power. The events of January 8th, 2025 began like any other morning in Chad, but as the day unfolded, it marked a grim chapter in the nation's history. A group of armed individuals stormed the presidential complex, the symbolic and operational center of Chad's political power. Shots echoed through N'Djamena, sparking a bloody confrontation between the attackers and security forces. In the wake of this audacious assault, 19 people were left dead. Among the casualties were government officials and soldiers who had fought to repel the attackers. For a nation already grappling with regional insurgencies, this strike at the core of its government brought a wave of shock and uncertainty. Initially, many suspected that the attack was carried out by Boko Haram, the notorious insurgent group with a long history of violence in the Sahel region. Chad, a frontline state in the fight against terrorism, has often been a prime target for such groups. The sheer scale and audacity of the attack seemed to align with Boko Haram's pattern of aggression. A shift in the narrative, however, as investigations progressed, the government unveiled a surprising twist. The attackers were not seasoned militants. According to officials, the group consisted of disorganized criminals, some reportedly intoxicated during the assault. The attackers, described as amateurs armed with basic weapons such as machetes and knives, managed to breach one of the most secure locations in the country. The government's response raised more questions than it answered. How could a group of misguided and drunk individuals infiltrate the presidential complex? Was this a failure of Chad's security apparatus, or did it point to deeper systemic issues? The public prosecutor's preliminary findings revealed that the attackers were a loosely organized band of 25 individuals, referred to as bandits. These individuals had stormed the complex, killing one guard and injuring 3 others, 2 of whom sustained serious wounds. Despite their rudimentary approach, they managed to penetrate a short distance into the presidency before the guards rallied to contain them. A wake-up call for Chad's leadership. The revelation that these were not seasoned insurgents, but a group of amateurs sent shockwaves through Chad. The attack underscored a troubling reality. Chad's political and military institutions, long regarded as robust, are more fragile than many had believed. For years, Chad has been a key player in the fight against insurgency in the Sahel, earning a reputation as a bastion of stability in a volatile region. But this attack has shaken that image. If a poorly equipped and disorganized group could breach the presidential complex, what does that say about the country's broader security infrastructure? This incident has exposed significant weaknesses in Chad's intelligence and defense systems. It has also raised concerns about the government's ability to respond to internal threats while managing the ongoing challenges posed by regional insurgencies. The geopolitical ripple effect. The world is watching Chad closely. As a frontline state in the Sahel, its stability, or lack thereof, has significant implications for the region and beyond. The attack has highlighted the precarious balance of power in Chad, a nation that has often been seen as a bulwark against extremist violence. The breach of the presidential complex is more than a domestic issue. It's a sign of broader vulnerabilities that could destabilize the region. For neighboring countries and international allies, this event serves as a stark reminder of the challenges facing the Sahel. Swift action in a time of chaos. In the immediate wake of the attack, Chad's government moved decisively to project control. Within hours, military forces flooded the streets of N'Djamena. Tanks rolled along the capital's main roads, and heavily armed soldiers bolstered security checkpoints around key installations. The government's message was unambiguous. The situation was under control. This rapid deployment was effective in containing the immediate threat, preventing further violence, and quelling fears of a larger insurrection. However, the reliance on military intervention highlighted Chad's enduring dependency on its armed forces to maintain order. a legacy deeply rooted in its political history. For Chad's leadership, the response was a demonstration of resolve. Yet, the heavy-handed presence of the military also underscored a more concerning reality: the continued dominance of military power in shaping Chad's political landscape. A nation defined by its military. Chad's history is deeply intertwined with military rule, and the events of January 2025 served as a stark reminder of this legacy. Since the death of longtime President Idris Deby in 2021, the country has struggled to transition from its traditional model of authoritarian, military-backed governance. The fact that the military remains the central mechanism for ensuring stability raises questions about Chad's readiness for democratic reform. The government's swift mobilization of military forces was not merely a response to the attack. It was a statement about the country's reliance on force over civilian institutions. This reliance, while effective in the short term, points to the fragility of Chad's political system. The ease with which military forces can take control, suggesting a political immaturity that continues to cast a shadow over Chad's democratic aspirations. This dependency on military power has consequences beyond Chad's borders. As one of the strongest military forces in the Sahel, Chad's stability is crucial for the region. However, its internal reliance on military rule creates vulnerabilities that insurgent groups are eager to exploit. Why insurgents target Chad? To understand the motivations behind attacks on Chad, one must consider its strategic position in Central Africa. Situated at the crossroads of several volatile regions, Chad is both a frontline defender and a prime target in the fight against insurgency. The Lake Chad Basin, where Chad borders Cameroon, Nigeria, and Niger, has long been a breeding ground for violence and instability. The porous nature of this region allows militant groups to cross borders with ease, launch attacks, and recruit fighters. For years, Chad has been a leading force in counterinsurgency efforts, particularly as a key member of the multinational Joint Task Force. This alliance, established to combat Boko Haram and other insurgent organizations, has placed Chad in the crosshairs of militant groups eager to weaken its influence. Attacking Chad serves multiple purposes for these groups. First, it disrupts the operations of one of the most capable military forces in the region. Second, it sends a chilling message to neighboring countries that even the strongest actors are not immune to violence. And third, it creates instability in a nation that has traditionally been a stabilizing force in the Sahel. Geographic challenges and security gaps. Chad's geographic position further complicates its security challenges. The natural barriers that separate Chad from its neighbors, such as deserts and sparsely populated borderlands, make it difficult for security forces to monitor and patrol effectively. These vast, ungoverned spaces provide insurgent groups with the freedom to operate largely unchecked. The Lake Chad Basin is a particularly vulnerable area, often described as a forgotten war zone. It is home to numerous militant groups that exploit the region's lack of governance. The inability to secure these borders has allowed insurgents to move freely, launch cross-border attacks, and evade capture. This geographic vulnerability is exacerbated by internal political instability. A country already struggling with fragile governance is less equipped to address the external pressures posed by insurgent groups operating along its borders. A history of military dominance and shifting leadership. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, Chad's political trajectory has been dominated by military figures. Coups, insurgencies, and authoritarian regimes have left little room for civilian governance or democratic development. This legacy was cemented further when President Idris Deby, who ruled the country for over 3 decades, died in 2021. His son, Mahamat Idris Deby, quickly assumed power under a military-led transitional government. Although Mahamat Deby's swift takeover was portrayed as a stabilizing move, it did little to address calls for reform. The military's continued dominance alienated opposition groups and sidelined efforts for broader political participation. Promises of reform gave way to the consolidation of power, with Chad's leadership clinging to the narrative that only the military could maintain stability in the face of internal and regional threats. 2024 elections. The 2024 elections were seen by many as a potential turning point for Chad, a chance to transition from military rule to a more inclusive, democratic system. However, the reality fell far short of these expectations, marred by allegations of fraud, low voter turnout, and accusations of manipulation. The election only deepened the nation's political crisis. Opposition leaders were excluded from meaningful participation, and the military maintained a firm grip on the electoral process. For many citizens, the outcome seemed predetermined, and their disillusionment was reflected in their decision to abstain from voting. Mahamat Déby's victory, achieved without a competitive process, further solidified the perception of a status quo entrenched in authoritarianism. The elections, rather than paving the way for democratic reforms, served as a pretext for the continued concentration of power in the hands of the military. This lack of political legitimacy fueled widespread frustration and anger among the populace. Protests erupted sporadically, signaling a growing divide between the government and its citizens. The attack on the presidential complex in January 2025 can be seen as a direct consequence of these simmering tensions, a manifestation of the public's disillusionment with a system that offers little hope for change. The election results deepened divisions within the country, leading to sporadic protests and growing frustration among the populace. A new chapter in Chad's geopolitical strategy. Amid its internal struggles, Chad has also been recalibrating its position on the international stage, historically aligned with France. The country has begun to forge new partnerships with nations like Russia and Hungary. This pivot reflects a broader desire to assert greater autonomy and reduce reliance on traditional Western allies. These new alliances could offer Chad opportunities for economic development, military cooperation, and political leverage. However, they also present challenges. Navigating complex global geopolitics requires careful balancing to avoid alienating existing partners while fostering new relationships. The shift away from France, once a key player in Chad's political and military affairs, marks a significant departure from the status quo. It signals Chad's intent to chart its path, but it also raises questions about how these new alliances will shape the nation's future. If you found this story compelling, let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you think Chad can achieve lasting stability? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into stories that matter.